already when you are, as they say, right?
Can be.
Oh, the mother. Boy. Okay, good. Good morning to everybody. It's very difficult in different ways. First of all, being maming with disclaimers, they say that I gave a different shit. They said a hesped of Chaim. A hesped of Chaim, you have to be somebody in the ballpark. It's like a 4-year-old kid telling him to speak about the president, the president. He described, the greatness of the president, the greatness of this great person. He's 4 years old. What does he understand about this human being? It's like it's a different world of us. I heard a few different aspects, so some of the material I heard from different people, but just to get a realm of what we're talking about, like in Pashki Seitzei, a few people mentioned it, but there was people in Pashki Seitzei, so he brings R Chaim ZT, how to say the words, brings the part from the Goin, that the Goin says the reason why the word get is used for a separation between a man and woman, because there's only two letters in Tanakh that don't appear together, either hafach or yashrim. So Reb Chaim asked on this guy, said there's 6 other places that we find, 6 other combination of letters. There's over 450 type of combinations. There's 6 other places, 4 or 5 other letters that don't appear together. Hafach or yashrim. The Gans Tanakh. So he gives a teretz to the Goy. Later on in the parasha, he brings also in that same parasha, he brings, unbelievable, so you're going to go out of your kelim. On the pasuk of Yilbash Gever, Simlas Isha. A man's not aware of Simlas Isha. So it says over there, Yesh La'ayin, Emut L'kroi L'zoch B'Shem Shal L'keva. Are you allowed to call a man by a woman's name or the hapich? So he brings a Chuvas Divrei Malkiah, Chelik Gimel Siman Ayin Hey. The Malkiah says, "Divrei Malkiah, when the dirty person she'ein lasus came. V'yesh b'zeh kama chashoshes, the zeichel davar lo yilbash gever sim lasisha. This chashoshes and the zeichel. Reb Chaim, this is before computed for anything. Reb Chaim is 79 mekoymes of places where you find that a gever. Obviously, you go out of your kedah from Shas, from Poiskim, from. This is just to look at the material. 79 mekoymes with non-computer. Of the guy, and then you also you find it over there. There's a sefer that brings down that you shouldn't call somebody a name before from Avinu, and he also goes on to 32 mekoymes. But we do find he brings hakamas to Spark. So the godless in Torah is something that, like it says, like a little 4-year-old go trying to describe somebody. So that makes it first hard to even say anything about Reb Chaim, because we're talking, at different leagues. There's something way above us. And the second of all, that everybody's spoken also. The second thing that there's been so many drushes about Reb Chaim. But Gamani Akotan will say a few words, not the divrei hesped as they say, but divrei zikaron. Divrei zikaron, to understand the mila. Again, the purpose of the divrei hesped, I said, in this week's parasha, we have a yidoim Aaron. The tachlis toiv lechas al beis ovel lechas al beis simcha ki achayitin el liba. It's a mile of a base avelis of a base simcha. What's the mile of a base simcha? The Gemara says brachos volum without a base agar debehi lulis milik. Rashi samech achosim b'dvarim. You're letting out. When you let out, but you don't take in as much. But if chayitin al liba agar the beitami says the Gemara shtika. As a person is supposed to be quiet, when the person is shosak and he hears, he takes in, it's much more of an impression. There's been a Yoda writes the mile of the oizen, the greatest mile, the greatest even that we have, Shmiras HaOizen is the Mela. So that's why the mile is that's Vayidam Ara to take in the Yisroel law, so to understand how we could grow from it, what we can take out of it. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, everybody talked about different nikudas of it. We have to understand that Reb Chaim lived in a different world. lived in a different world totally. There was no, R Chaim was one with the Torah. And one with the Torah, that means that was it. There was nothing but Torah in his life. And because there was nothing in Torah, there was nothing that had any effect, that he lived in a different realm, a different plateau. When a person lives in that Torah, that plateau, he's above everything. When God lost, so as the Mishnah says in Ovis, when God lost, you're living in a different world. And what is that world that he lived with? That world is the world of living with the Eibishter. And we live with the Eibishter, nothing in the world else matters. Nothing. People think, oh, Chaim's, obviously he's godless, that he had no shayach to Olam. Someone told me Maisa, recently I heard of Maisa, that at 80 years old, for some reason the grandchild had to brought him a piece of chocolate. And he looked at the piece, he said, what do I do with this? Do I eat it? Do I swallow it? Do I smear it on my body? At 80 years old, he didn't know what a piece of chocolate is. He didn't know anything. He didn't know the streets. He didn't have any chance to anything. All of that. He didn't want it to be there because it has no shaykhs to where he's living. He didn't know the names of the streets. He didn't have a telephone. We're talking about, he said, people that lived maybe 2,000 years ago, no telephone. The pshat is, he didn't need the telephone because it didn't enter his world. It was not shaykh to his world. From the Murray in the Tziv in this week's parasha, Reb Chaim also, but you have to understand, carried the entire world on his shoulder. Every tzara. If we would sit there in 2 minutes in the room, we wouldn't be able to go back to. Forget about learning. We would be walking around in the days. And we steht am Murray in the Tziv in this week's parasha. Steht da say noch the Meiser with the Meiser not of Aviu. Vayoyim Moshe La'aret. Kollel is abon of. But Mashechem al Tifro with them was Tifro with the Mutz al Kollel the Yiksav Achechem Kobeis Yivku as a Sreif Hashasav Hashem. We pass a whole moy like say to Penuk Yishem Mishchas Hashem Aleichem v'Yasuk Tvam Moshe. So they did like Moshe. Vayidar b'Hashem Aaron Leima Yain v'Sheich al Teish Atu v'Nech Yitoch b'Voyachem Alo Moyed. ולא יסמוך ולהבדל בין הקודש ובין החול ובין התורה ובין התורה. זוק דהלק נציב. באשר דאוינן פוסל לעבודה. משום דשורי בצער. And oinen's possible avoida because he's shoy b'tzai. He can't do avoida. Any yochel lios ba'avas Hashem udveikus habo ach mitoy simcha shom mitzvah. You can't be b'dveikus, and therefore ba'avoida it's a mice of dveikus ba'kodesh baruch hu. And oinen is not shayater. Mishum hochi achilas kodshim lebayim kam kin osel oinen. Ein pesha yuma. V'ach kakoyin godol rashai lahakir v'oinen. A koyin godol is rashai lahakir v'oinen. Mishum shlefi eirech k'du loso zok de'el z'mitziv. Efshel lizgaber al tzaroi uvelama lefnei Hashem b'simcha. V'kach hoyes imidosha shal Aaron. Omnam he avoided the kosher b'migdash. Nebuch lo aleinu, he just lost his son. But he has to be makir b'mesanish, and not just makir. It has to be only between dveikus v'abbas abari. Zok de'el k'netziv. Avoid the kosher b'migdash. How is a person supposed to misgaber on such a matzav? But so Dov the Sayabaseh, for Yisi Oimer Lishtois Yain B'Sheicha. I would say that he should eat, drink wine. Tell you, as the pasuk says in Mishnah Lamanaf, Shnu Sheicha La'Oivi Yain L'Mori Lev Yishtav Yishkach Reisha Mishum Hochi Hizra HaKadosh Baruch Yain B'Sheicha Hashem. The pill. Rega. So Te'el G'Nitziv. Rabbi says, Kedai to come just for this Nitziv. Ulahavdil ben hakodesh, hoysev hakodesh baruch lo says eitza acheres, l'sameach haleiv, l'asiach daitu mitzar, hayno ha'dayena shel toira, ha'mesamech es leiv, k'dichsir pekudei Hashem yishon mesamech leiv. Ulahavdil ben hakodesh ben hachoyel, you know how to be miskab on the matzav. Ulahavdil ben hakodesh ben hachoyel, eitza acheres yena shel toira. I'm sameach leiv k'dichsir pekudei Hashem yishon mesamech leiv. Da kein Isra zochem l'havdil. The next part is l'havdil ben hakodesh. Torah, havdil is Torah. Because the l'havdil is to know the halachas of how to be mavdil. Vayro. Zok der as the Isa, the Yumayin base, Zocham is Samchasai. But the Maisa, that was in a place that you want to know. That's the story of Chaim lived in a different world. And not Avada, he was in Stav with Sarah, but a minute later, he was in a different realm, in a different world. And he left with the Torah and Ganser, but he said every second was with the Torah. He had the minute, there was nothing. I mean, because of that, he was to me always happy. There was nothing you need. People say, "Oh, we're Chaim, look at the house." You could go into the corridor. You feel like you fit thousands of people walking through that corridor. How did a person live in such a house? This, the person said, there was nothing meant anything to the Chaim. Didn't know what bracha he should make, and bracha achrayna. What did I eat? What I didn't eat? There was nothing that occupied. Because it's not the pshat. The pshat was a person. He was in a different realm, a different world. He was misdavik b'kutrabrichu. The Meridik of Rashi this week's parasha. Rashi says that we would have a havamina that just like a kohen gadol that's shoyse yayin is possible avoida. So we would have since lahavdil smichas lahavdil is that a person that's moira hoira is chayiv misa if he's shikah. But it's a havamina. Okay, he's doing the avoida of Beis Hamikdash as a little shikah, a little Jack Daniels beforehand. Kaddish doing the avoida, but the guy is learning Torah. And he's doing the Maisa Raw. What's the pshat? He's Chayiv Misa. Hashoy Sigan Al Yoira. More in Ksubis Yoram Beis. I feel a person ate dates. He shouldn't also eat Al Yoira. What's the pshat? The pshat is a person Zoivi. We find in the Eden of Zivug. More in the Dorm of Chav. And the Eden of Zivug is the Tisham Midas. That a person now will be Shosei Yayin. There's this Davgus. At that moment, this Davgus. A person not allowed to be a Matzah Shosei. The Maisa of Hoirah is not just learning Torah, it's his Davgus with Kodesh Baruch Hu. As the Havamina would be, and Hoirah is the Pru Revu. Lo see Okra Yisroel, so the Baal Turim, the Torah. The Chidushay Torah, that's the Pru Revu. It's his Davgus with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. He's bit the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the Hilch Rav Chaim Elojit, Perek Beis Mishnah Yudalit. Da'alef Neimiyat HaOmel Sheba Ois HaShah not Lefei Oimei Lefei Neimiyat HaOmel Sheba Ois HaShah Sheba person learning Torah he's with the Shechina Mamish the Shechina Shreishim Kinegdo V'Lamdoi and Meila and the sort of learning Torah and this is what Chaim felt Vegas HaKodesh Baruch Hu at the highest level Vegas and there's the Ava there's the Simcha person's for praying with HaKodesh Baruch Hu there's no greater Simcha so R Chaim HaKodesh, Paz Kisavai, Shiloi b'nei Adam Agishim, Ba'arevus and B'sikus Tevat Torah Mishtagin, B'vislater Acharev, Neshu Kol Kezav Azov L'Me'uma, Ki HaTorah Kollel Kol HaTorah Shema'oila. R Chaim knew nothing but Torah because Torah gave him everything. So I'm Meridik Mashachach and Paz V'Yikra. You look at all. He's talking about over there, Pesach Al Moya, the din that a person has to be makriv. Pesach Al Moya, that the din of Hakravas Korban in the morning, she does Toises Abachav by all Korbanis, it's Vachaz Amah. But the Maisa, the Meshachach says over there, on the Pasuk Kumya, the morning Talmud Lamed Beis with Beis, Kol Oisik B'Torah B'Lai Shechina Kinegdai, Shenema Kumi Roni B'Layla, the Rosh Hashmuras, Shivchi Kamayim Shlibech Noichak Pnei Hashem, Lamed Beis with Beis and Talmud. So there's up there, Meshachach Pash Vayikri. Look at us up there. What's the aside? He says there's a pasuk Azorim B'Dima reading. So normally he says that when a person is involved in any pool in this world, the rina, the simcha is only when he comes to the end, the result, when he produces something. Azorim B'Dima reading through, and therefore says the Netziv. That be'emes, by a person learning Torah, but also it depends while he's learning. If he has any ulterior motive, chutz mi'istabkus ba'Kodesh Baruch Hu, that's all he's interested in, then it's a different story. But if he's interested in anything else, covered, he has to do it for any other prachas chutz from the Etzim Torah, says the Netziv, you won't have the simcha b'shas ma'isa. Azorim b'dima b'rinig soiru. But when a person is oisik Torah l'shma only for the tachas of Torah and nothing else, then Kumi Roini Belayla, there's arena at that moment Gufa. And the Fiza want to imaz, but that's the shall we say the Tefillah. Bros Chavchaz Meidel Vanecha, Shesamta Chakim, Anachtu Amelim Mekam Schar. R Chaim says Anachtu Amelim Mekam Schar means that we get schar for the Amelis, but that's then. But it says from Mekablim. Das ist jetzt. Was ist das schar für Amelis? Das ist der Resh Chacham Paz Vayikra. Kumi Reini Balai, the arena is B'Shas Maisa, because it's Dabkus B'Kadosh Baruch Hu, you're clinging, you're one with Hashem. There's nothing else in the world. That's the Metzias. And that was the Metzias of R Chaim. There was nothing else. As Chazal say, from a Kabul Ol Torah, Ma'avirim Imenu. Ol Der, so Zok Tehilika, Ton V'Eliyo, Amended. Kol Talmid Chacham, R Chaim brings the Klein Perek to say, Ton V'Eliyo, Rabbi Perek Dal. Kol Talmid Chacham, Sha'oisi B'Torah, B'Chol Yom Tomid, B'Shvil HaHarbas, Koit Shemayim. Ein Otzorach Loi Cherev, V'Loi Chanis. He doesn't need no sword, no nothing. Kol Kol Tom Shia Loi Shoyme. Ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'atzmai Shoymroi. In the Shomer Perek Yivches. Im Yesh Boi Bolim Derech Eretz. Mikro Levad, Moshe Loi Malach Echad Shoymroi. Kol Adam Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim, Moshe Loi Shnei Malachim. Kimalach Vitzal, aber Kol Adam Torah Nevi'im Ksuvim. V'shonim Mishnah Medrash Halachas V'Agoda, it's called Torah Kula. V'shimish Tamid HaCholim. V'shamish Tehilek Chazon Ish. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mishamroi Ba'atzmoi. Shalem Hashem Shorech. Listen carefully, says the Hilchot Shachai. Ukvi Erech HaKibul Asher Yikabel Av Ol Torah Be'emes V'Kol Koichoi Kein Lefi HaErech Yosiru V'Yaviru V'Menu Tiradois In Yoni Zeh HaOyla. You won't have any tiradus. The need of how much? V'Hashmira Al Yoina Choyfefes Olav. There's a Shmira Al Yoina above you. Ben Hamischate Al Aviv. People want to know that Chaim was answered. He told people, I saw Maisa yesterday, the guy came to him, he had a big mishpat. He had a paradise, he had an Arab working, the Arab fell off the ladder. The Arab injured himself. So he sued, he had insurance, but they wanted to go after him, much more money, they wanted $1 million, the lawyer went after him. So his lawyer said, we have to come with a counter offer. In other words, he went to R Chaim, what should I do? What's the counter offer? Ten lahem shekel. Tell them you're going to give him a shekel. The guy says, shekel. They throw me out. Meshuggah. So R Chaim says, give them a shekel. I'll give the shekel. So R Chaim goes into his wallet. He takes out a shekel. He takes the shekel. The guy doesn't know what he's going to do. He calls, he tells his lawyer, so what's the counter offer to the $1 million? $1 million shekel? 1 shekel. What? And your lawyer's screaming at you, you're Meshuggah. You're off your more. 1 shekel, they're going to kids up. 1 shekel. He goes, they send the thing back to the other lawyer of the other side. The other lawyer said they start screaming and yelling at you, you're crazy. A few days later, they call back and says, okay, we'll just take the insurance policy. This guy's Meshuggah. He says 1 shekel. So you have the video, came back, and then he comes back to the Chaim and says, look what happened. He says, Eina Chanami, the shekel was Miyuta. So he says, oh, Chaim says, give it me back. So he gives him back the shekel. Then he says, well, then yes, Chaim, can I have the shekel? I want to tell everybody. Kiben HaMischate Al Aviv, V'Ol Oisel L'Tzoyla, V'Mashal L'Chavtzoi. K'may Sha'am Rabbi Seinu, Kol Oiseg Torah, V'Kadosh Baruch Hu Oisel L'Chavtzoi. That's the Yisroel. A person mistabek is the Ben. So there's nothing in this world but HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Hashem does everything for everybody. That's what we saw. Again, it's not a husband, but that's what we can be zoicha. The Heilig Torah to mistabek, with the Torah by side. Ein Simcha, ein Geschmack. God will be